Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Year of the Dead. So this is the second episode, but it's the first time we're actually going to be reviewing an individual movie. And like we said before, we're starting off with Night of the Living Dead.
The OG.
The OG. That came out in 1968, I believe.
1968.
He didn't think I would just stop talking and let that be the showcase for a second. Anyways, this is, as we said before, made by George Romero, and it really is a movie that created what we know of as zombies today. Before then, it was just kind of voodoo stuff.
Like White Zombie, was that voodoo?
That was voodoo, but and that was in the 30s, I want to say, and there wasn't a lot of zombie movies.
I don't think there's a lot of.
So he really did kind of pioneer this thing, and there is some stuff in this that's different than what we think of as zombies nowadays, but the template has largely been unchanged.
It's funny with this movie, the rules of what zombies can and can't do. There's wiggle room. It's not like just one thing. Like they might be able to do this, but then sometimes they just do this.
Yeah, because it's more convenient for the story if they can't run and sprint right now and use tools, but right now we need them to run and sprint and use tools, and other times we need them to go as slow as possible. So, and one thing I noticed while watching this is it is very clearly an amateur production. It's not like we can go out and film something this good ever. That's not what we're saying. But
8 people. There'd be 8 people in the movie. So
it would be the same zombie with a different wig each time.
Which actually might be really funny. That actually might be really funny.
But
mustache.
Different mustaches.
We have an idea now.
All right. So that's going to be episode 3. Is this just a short film remaking Night of the Living Dead? But anyways.
I digress.
Many times we do in these reviews. It's very amateur because when we were watching it, there was times there were these random jump cuts or people
something that was there on the floor isn't there and then it's there again. I'm not 100% sure. They burn a chair at one point outside a door, and I think when they get in the car, the chair's not there. But at the end of the movie, it's there. So I may be wrong on that.
There's a lot of inconsistencies, but it's what you would expect from a production of that because it really was a very low budget film.
You can tell by the opening, title card. It's that looks like somebody that doesn't even look like they try to make it horror related. It was just kind of
just
Night of the Living Dead. It's oh jeez.
But it is a very good movie. Good movie. I would say it holds up very well, and I very rarely ever, probably never mention these in reviews, but we watched the Criterion Collection version of Night of the Living Dead, and it's very crisp, the picture quality.
What we were talking about with it is because Night of the Living Dead is in public domain, so you could pick up a copy of it for $2 off one of those really skinny DVD case things that you'll find.
Or a compilation of 10 other public domain films.
And the problem with that is the movie's probably been copied and copied and copied. Like with the picture, every time you copy it and copy it and copy it, a little bit gets lost in the translation.
Plus, those ones where it's a bunch of movies on one disc, it's compressed so much. So we never actually bothered to watch a very well preserved copy of the film, so it was very nice.
And I would Criterion's always something that it's expensive, but they have a lot in it. And it's going to be a good, especially old movies, black and white. I've seen a few black and white Criterion that they really did a good job remastering it.
So normally we don't talk about those kind of matters, but in this case it's a very good release, and it's not too expensive to find on the secondary market.
You might have to spend, I don't know, it could be $15, $20 for a Criterion of this compared to the $2 one you find it at a dollar store. But the quality is definitely not going to be there in that $2 one at the dollar store. So it suffers because it is public domain, so people just copy and copy and copy.
Yeah,
it's on somebody's computer now, and he burned it to a DVD. Someone got that DVD, burned it to a computer.
Then colorized that version.
Yeah, it's just it's kind of chaotic.
It is.
And that's why you're losing a lot. So finding an official release of it, which I don't know how many official releases there have been.
I don't even know if you can call things official.
I don't think
it's in the public domain.
That's probably the cheapest thing Criterion ever acquired to put into
probably. But there's also a 2-disc release, and they had a bunch of extras on it.
I know,
but we won't touch upon.
A while ago, we watched a colorized version of it, which was fun. was a novelty. It was kind of nice.
I would say a novelty is a good way to put it.
Because I watched it. We've watched this movie so many times in our life, so it's kind of nice seeing that. But at the same time, it's a black and white movie. It needs to be black. It shines in being black and white, but it is fun if you could get a colorized version.
Yeah,
to kind of
the colorized looks cheaper, and maybe we'll review what a colorized looks down the line. But it does look cheaper when you add the color to it because it's I don't know. It doesn't feel right. No, it doesn't even look right.
Because especially if it was your first time watching it, it was a colorized version. It'd probably be not that big of a deal.
Yeah, probably wouldn't hit.
We've all seen bad colorized old movies.
Yes,
but that one was definitely.
I think there was one for House on Haunted Hill and
another good movie,
Last Man,
Year of the Haunted Hill. There we go. I don't know where we go. I don't know where we go with that because there's only like 3 in that series.
Yeah,
but that's a comparatively. It's definitely an older movie, but that's a comparatively of that time period.
But it is a novelty for watching stuff like that. But anyways,
it was fun.
We just rewatched the Criterion Collection version of it.
We probably watched this movie 15 times or so.
Yeah, quite a bit. And it, to me, like it's slow paced, but it's not very.
It doesn't lag.
Yeah, I don't feel like it lags because it feels. Though I say it's amateur production, it does feel very realistic at times.
It feels like the pace, even though it's slow, it's accurate.
Yeah,
it's not like you've all watched a movie where it's like it lags for like 20-30 minutes and it's annoying, and you're like, why did it do that? If it lagged, it was very short.
And it was the tension it was building. So, like one scene I was thinking was there was a time where, and we'll discuss the plot in a moment, but there's a time where one of the main characters, Ben, is like dismantling the house to get a bunch of wood to then barricade the door, and to like barricade the doors and windows. And it's just you can hear the zombies outside. It's not loud; they're not banging on the doors, but it's like very like low moaning sound.
And I will say. What was it? Dwayne Jones was
Dwayne Jones is the actor.
He was a good pick for Ben because Ben's kind of the big hero of it, and he's kind of the one keeping everyone kind of either in check or together. Yeah. In the movie, and
the acting is very good for
African American lead role in a horror movie,
which is insane.
And one of the first, and even though in like cinema, where they're the hero, in which I was just reading this, the actor the role never said a race, so he's one of the first heroes and the main heroes of a movie. Maybe not the first in overall, but definitely in horror movies. But overall, where it didn't say that this character is black.
Yeah, because his race has no bearing on the plot.
You could argue there's racial overtones at the end. That's not what was intended. Could you remake it and play that up? I would say so, and it'd be good. But with Ben, he is probably one of the best characters in zombie movies.
Yes, definitely one of the most memorable.
Top 5 has to be, and he's
probably in the top 5. And they're just thinking of my favorite zombie movies, and then the characters I like from it.
Yeah, he's phenomenal though.
Maybe not my favorite from a Romero movie, but when we get to those characters, and
because I probably know which ones you're going to say from at least Dawn of the Dead, which has arguably one of the other best, and then. But this one, the casting I thought was pretty well for their characters for a amateurish movie. The casting was really good.
So. We didn't normally. I start these reviews by going like in a little bit of review of the plot, so I'll kind of like back up to do that. It is very simple in the setup and the execution of it. It starts with the main character Barbara and her brother, I believe Johnny. He doesn't last long, so he's not too important.
Coming for you, Barbara.
And they're just like putting flowers on like their dad's grave, and zombies.
And then there's like a big loud thunder. Which it never rains.
Never rains.
But there's a big thunder, and Johnny's like, and you're like, oh no, that's showing that this is the storm's coming. But it's like then there's not even like a trickle.
Plus, they could have used that later because the zombies in this are afraid of fire, and they could have did the rain puts out the fire and that gets them closer to the house. But anyways, very small production. That's not something they were going to try to do. But anyways, zombies start coming out. Johnny dies, and Barbara runs into this house.
He doesn't even get eaten. He wrestles with a zombie and hits his head on a corner of a tombstone.
Bye-bye, Johnny. And when she makes it to the house, Ben shows up. And then once they like fix up that house, pretty much the whole movie takes place in that house.
It's a siege.
Yeah,
it's one of the better. It's one of the first real zombie movies, but it is like the first siege.
It is really good.
A good zombie movie needs a good siege.
And we'll get to later in the series my favorite siege, and it's not even in a Romero film. But anyways, eventually, once they barricade everything, they found out people were in the basement, and
the whole time.
Yeah, the whole time.
I swear, like 45 minutes goes by.
I think it's a long time in the movie.
They come out of the basement.
So yeah, and again, it's not like a plot hole. Like, oh, they were there the whole time. It's like Ben immediately becomes mad that they were there the whole time and not helping them.
Yeah.
But anyways, they have like Mr. Cooper and Mrs. Cooper. They have their daughter, who you find out is been bit, so she's gonna
she's lingering before she dies, and she does die later in the movie. Spoiler alert.
But another thing to remember, they mention it on like news broadcasts, but you don't actually see anyone come get bitten and then come back as a zombie until like the end. So you don't actually know for sure if that is a thing. Nowadays, that's common knowledge.
It's a trope that you.
Back then, it would have been a surprise.
This is so out of there, but I was just thinking about the trope of being bit, Tokyo Zombie, where the guy got bit. He's just like, well, I'm going to turn into a zombie. So he does all this stuff, and you find out the zombie had dentures, so it really wasn't.
He like eats himself out of the window.
It's just...
So
I'm just thinking of the trope.
That's not a movie we plan on reviewing, but it is a
look it up.
It's
expensive if you ever get it.
It is
good Asian movie, like from Japan. Great.
Yeah, it is. It's great. Anyways, another digression. Tokyo Zombie.
I'm just thinking of that trope that lives rent free in my mind.
But yeah, so it's and from there they think of ways trying to get out. It doesn't go well. Zombies get in. People die.
People get cooked.
Yep. People get cooked. So one of the big things, well, I would say there's two big things with the characters that we haven't mentioned yet. Barbara is
useless.
Completely useless.
She's that trope of the helpless woman, but like taken to at least the helpless woman's like talking and like in that trope, she's just like, obviously she's PTSD, shell shock from the death of her brother.
Her brother dying.
So it makes sense within like the actual story, but it's just kind of comical. Like Ben is like, can you go get some wood? I'm gonna like nail up the doors, and then he's doing it, and she's just standing there like, and he starts getting pissed off,
rightfully so,
because in your head you're watching it and you're like, yeah, fuck this lady. He's doing all the work and then he gets pissed.
Yeah. So, but like also at the same time, like she's just like traumatized. And I did notice this time, and normally I haven't because I've just been mad at her the entire time. At the very end, when Mrs. Cooper is at the door almost getting pulled out, she runs, like screams, like throws something against the door to try to get him, and ultimately that leads to her death. And Mrs. Cooper doesn't live much longer after that, but she did save her. She did do something at the end.
She redeemed herself. And I know a critique this movie gets a lot is she's just a helpless woman that's stupid. But then there's two other women in this movie that are not useless.
Yes.
So it's kind of like...
It's just a character. It's a character choice.
I don't think that's a good critique because it's a character choice. Mm-hmm. It's not like playing off a stupid trope that doesn't really help the movie.
Yeah.
So I would say like hers is being PTSD. She's like all like shell shocked from stuff. But then there's other women that actually contribute, more or less in different ways.
I would say the other like important character, there were like two other people in the basement I didn't mention, but ultimately they're not too important.
Yeah, it's just like a young couple.
Yeah, and then there is Mr. Cooper, though, immediately at odds with Ben, and they are throughout the movie. There's times when they, I don't want to say work together, but they tolerate each other and do things that both benefit each other and the whole group. But throughout, you can tell, like, obviously, they're not, like, all of a sudden, like, buddy and friends.
They build the tension between the heads. Like, the movie does a good job with the tension between people. That's what I really liked about it. Eventually
Mr. Cooper like goes along with their plan and helps out, but when things go sideways he just reverts back to like I think he's just very scared. So I can see
he's worried about his wife and his daughter. Like when Ben is really he's worried about everybody, but Ben doesn't have a family aspect of it. So you could get the difference. I really did kind of I don't want to say I take Ben's not Ben. I don't want to say I take Mr. Cooper's side in it, but I did see his point of view a lot more than I did. I just love how we're digging so deeply into this movie where they weren't thinking about much of this.
No, honestly, I don't think so.
Romero was
This is the beginning. This is the beginning of his career.
When it came to like, because he does the same stuff in don't want to say every one of his movies, but he has movies that are just the characters. You build tension in between the good guys. There's tension between them, and then there's this whole like dynamic with the outside and the zombies that are phenomenal.
Yes, and one thing I would say, ultimately, the downfall I feel like comes from within. It's not the zombies ultimately destroying the house and getting in, which is what happens. But it's like the infighting. It's just
if you kind of look at it, once that they start really fighting, that's when Barbara goes and tries to save, and she dies, and then
I think that's a theme that we're going to see through most of Romero's movies. Looking back, it's not something I thought of before, but like
it's actually a very
things. It's the humans that lead to their own downfall, I believe.
Which, if you ever watch The Walking Dead, that's entirely what The Walking Dead's about.
Yes,
it's not the zombies after a while; it's the people.
So it is very interesting to look at it that way. So, in conclusion, this is like a very cheaply made movie. It's very amateur, but you can tell that he was a great director, and
getting his start
from the budget that he had, he made a great movie.
He builds that world going into, and each one of his movies you'll see after this is a little different than the last one about like the context. What does this? I think there's a little less wiggle room as it goes on with zombies. This one just by wiggle room. Sometimes they're just like this, and the other times they're moving kind of quickly.
Yeah, because they didn't have it figured out.
So it's like why are they like just shambling over to him this time? But they were sprinting and holding on, and they were using tools and stuff. So they
do become more concrete as the series.
But then they start, and then a few movies later, the zombies start learning. So I mean, it's a ride.
But yeah, it is a ride. So we will get to the next movie in the series, which is Romero's second film, which is Dawn of the Dead.
Arguably better than
as Romero, I would say Romero's 6 films in this series is probably my favorite.
I think it's the best. I have a soft spot for this movie.
Yes, I do too.
So, I didn't see this one. I think I saw this one.
We saw this before Dawn of the Dead.
That's what I think, but I saw the remake of Dawn of the Dead. So I already got kind of like that Dawn of the Dead vibe.
Did. I hadn't, but you had.
But we saw this one first, and arguably I'd recommend watching this. If you haven't watched the Romeros and you want to start watching through them, watch this one first. Because they're loosely connected. By loosely, I mean they're zombies and it's in the same universe.
Yeah, the characters don't show up again except one special time later.
There's time jumps that you kind of like James Bond. You're just like, we're going to ignore those.
And sometimes movies technically take place before other ones, but they all take place in this shared universe, and it's really the themes that kind of build them all together. But as we get to the sequels and review them, we'll talk about.
I'm looking forward to Dawn of the Dead, so it's gonna be fun.
It's a good one. You guys will enjoy it.
10 more paramedics.
I can't wait till we get to that.